in Asia, there's a lot of talk about face culture, people that are big in Japanese, Korean, Chinese business will say, oh, you've got to do this for face, or they're doing that to save face. So that's this whole idea of like the social, people's sensitivity to the social perception of your relationship or you as an individual. In the West, we have this idea around ego and relationship between the individual and society as being like a bad thing. Like it's a bad thing that you're very socially sensitive. It's a bad thing that you care so much what other people think, or it's a bad thing that you are acting in a performative way. One thing I can say, having lived on both sides, is like, it's really worth it to be sensitive to the image of leaders that you're interacting with in business. It's a lot of just suppression of your own ego.
Today, globally awarded hospitality leader shaping world-class bars from east to west. Meet Chris Lowder, co-founder of Lowder Toscarella Hospitality. Welcome to The Exit Interview. Welcome to The Exit Interview. Today we are here with a very exciting guest. Meet Chris Lowder. Hi, Chris. Welcome.
Hey, how are you?
Good. Chris, you are co-founder of Lowder Toscarella Hospitality. So great to have you with us today. You have a very interesting background. You're pretty much a well-rounded global resident, particularly in Asia and then, of course, the United States, where you currently reside. You've had a career of building fantastic hospitality spots all over the world, which we will get into, but you actually started your journey as a translator.
Yes. Oh my gosh, a pleasure to be on. Thanks for having me here.
Great to see you.
I'm loving the episodes. I'm so excited to share non-linear life journey. That's the way to chat about it.
You have a classic one, Chris. We're excited to talk to you.
If there's anything that's typical, it's being completely atypical. So that's the way. It's been really fun. Yeah, I started as a translator, spent time as a cook and a bartender, bar manager, opened hotels. I lived in Asia Pacific for about 10 years. As a student, as a translator, as a business manager, a whiskey importer, a hotel consultant in China. Went through COVID in China. I'm probably one of 5 Americans that can tell you that story.
Right.
And now I live in Miami, where I am running my company, LTH, Lowder Toscarella Hospitality, and we develop bars and restaurants for luxury and lifestyle hotels around the world. I have a lot of fun in life and living it, but it hasn't always been easy to get from point A to wherever point I'm on now.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
We're kind of jumping into the middle of the story, which is a fun place to start. And then this is like a Tarantino way of telling the story. So I moved to Shanghai to open a hotel consultancy for luxury beverage programs. And we also did spirits importing. So like think whiskey from Scotland or gin from France or Caribbean rum or whatever. So we would import all that into China and then distribute it to bars all across the country. We're there running around the country and I'm feeling like, oh my gosh, I am really needing to take a minute. You know what I mean? Take a minute, spend some time with myself. I have so many late nights in bars and in back rooms, and karaoke rooms, like selling whiskey in China is difficult business. We were selling like single cask whiskey. So imagine you've got like a 32-year Macallan or something like that. Now, a 32-year Macallan cask might go for like $300,000. Okay. Wow. So, and what we would do is we got a cartoonist to do like a custom front label of the bottle. And so if you're like Mr. Yang with your fancy company and all your millions of dollars, what's something that you can't necessarily buy? So we would say, hey, I'll get a cartoonist to do a picture of you and a picture of your company behind you and all your employees, you know, and your dog or some personal details in your life. And we'll weave all that together and put it on the front label of the whiskey. And you can, you know, give that to all your friends.
Out. Right.
Yeah. And so people would get really excited about that. But they're not just going to spend 300 grand or 200 grand or whatever. They want time with you. In China, you know, everyone has their love language. In China, it's time spent. So and gifts given. So you've got to go. I would go like 3 days, 4 days to like southern China, to like Guangzhou or Dongguan or Xi'an or Xiamen or whatever. Me, I speak Mandarin because I was a translator once upon a time, and so I go and I meet with Mr. Yang. Here's how that goes. If you're ever in the situation where you're having to do business,
sell $300,000 worth of whiskey in China.
if that comes up in your journey, here's how it goes: is you show up at the train station or the airport. You know, some dude is there in like a ill-fitting giant black suit, even though it's like 90 degrees outside, and you're gonna go up some little back staircase, 6 floors. And you sit down and it's like dark hallways, whatever. You sit down in this back little storeroom and you get to finally a catacomb of people on their desks just doing work, and everything's a mess. There's files everywhere.
Right.
There's like a ping pong table over here. There's, you know, some weird Chinese calligraphy painting on the wall, whatever. And you get ushered back into the back office. Now, the back office in a Chinese trading company is a giant table. I mean, it's like a comically large, and this is, I've been to 100. This is not a,
this is right.
This is, you will see exactly this. Right. It's a comically large table.
Right. It's like 1,000 years old or something.
Yeah. It should be in the Louvre or whatever.
Right.
But there it's
like, it's in the back of some warehouse. Right.
Yeah. You know, and these guys that have this money and they're just like buying cultural artifacts and using it to make tea, and it's a blast. So you sit there, they start making tea, and you will have tea. They open a little packet and they're like, this is called, literally, I had one time, the guy was like, this is called duck piss tea. And he's like, and it's called duck piss tea because it smells like duck piss. And I was like, oh boy.
Pour me a cup. Can't wait.
They're like, this is a big deal. Like, we don't just bring out the duck piss.
We don't bring out the duck piss tea for anybody, any old body, baby. You're a special guest. You get the duck piss.
Unironically, like this much duck piss tea is like $600 for like a tea bag, you know, and so this is a big deal to get the duck piss tea. It's the first steep and the second steep, and then you're talking, and then, you know, out comes cigars, and so you can't even smell the duck piss because the cigars are there. So anyway, and so you do all this, then you go to hot pot. And hot pot, you know, you've got a huge thing of broth, chili broth, meats and sauces. You'll go back to the office. You'll have some more tea. People will be on their phones. They'll have random people will come and go. That's the other thing about these offices is, you know, it's like you're in the Godfather's office and like some guy comes in and he's dropping like some bag and you're like, what's that? They're like, don't worry about that.
Right.
It's just this constant churn of people. Right. He's got 5 lackeys that are in there, but they're not contributing value. They're just playing like League of Legends on their phones and just like chain smoking e-cigarettes. And so you're like, you know, and every now and then one of them will say like, oh, you know, Mr. Chun is buying 6 bottles of something. Okay. And then they're back to their like League of Legends game. And then you're just sitting there as a weird total fish out of water.
Right. Because have you talked business at this point? No.
No. That's actually taboo. It is taboo.
Right. You're just vibing. Right.
You are there
how
for
many,
the vibe.
like how long before you can even talk? How many meetings before you can even talk business?
So you go back to the office, more tea, cigars, another bottle of whiskey. Then you go out to karaoke. And at this point, it's like 11 p.m. or whatever. You go to a karaoke room. You and all the lackeys and everybody sits. You'll sit in the center. They'll give you the mic. You're like guest of honor. You're a Westerner, so they'll be like, do some Eminem. You know what I mean? They'll be like, you look like that guy. And
high expectations.
And it goes over so well. Everyone's clapping and to the beat, and you've got your matcha ice cream or whatever you got in that karaoke room. It's epic. And then you get to 2 a.m., 3 a.m., and they turn to you and they put a little hand on your shoulder and they're like, how much was that cask of whiskey? And you're like, 300 grand. They're like, all right, send the invoice over.
Oh, tomorrow. Interesting. So they have to like you. Like they're waiting to see if they're trying to get to know you and your personality and see if they trust you by having like a night of drinking and fun and tea to actually sort of bond. And then they give you the green light by asking, okay, how much it is.
And by the end, the price and product doesn't really matter so much, because they say in China that you do business with the person, not the company. That's a big part of Chinese culture.
Love that. Yeah. America should adopt that.
Because here I feel like it's the reverse.
Of course. So in China, it's a high value on the human, a high value on human relationships. Companies you got to be slow to hire. It's difficult to fire. It's there's a lot of employee protection. Interesting. Country makes sense. And so that's kind of how it's all built. But then also just business to business relationships. It's like, sometimes you'll even go into a bad deal knowing that it's a bad deal, because it's like, hey, 10 years
you just want to work with the person.
It's a lot of it's going to be water under the bridge. And they say, look, like, I've been doing business with this guy or this lady for 20 years or 30 years across 6 companies, and they say, you're my people. And so for them, they say, look, for us, it's about the relationship. You don't do a thing called cold business. Cold business is when you just do business over the phone or email. They're like, dude, if we're doing business with you, I want to see you. I want you here. I want to, we got to go out.
And that's not just for foreigners doing business. It's for everyone.
Right. It's for everybody. Right.
Yeah. I'm unusually deep in the culture for a non-Chinese.
For a foreigner, probably.
Yeah. China's 99.3% Han Chinese or something like that. And the number of foreigners who actually speak Chinese fluently are almost nothing. I mean, and it's getting less every day with AI. You have less incentive to study the language, so that's rare. But the one big thing is they say, look, like, I want to see you drunk. There's a saying in the old Latin saying, right? Like, in vino veritas, right? That, like, truth in wine.
In wine, truth. Right.
Like, you're going to be your most realist self when all your inhibitions are gone. So I want to see at the end of the day, what are you like, when
all the boundaries are down.
And we're going to get hammered together.
I'm curious, for you, having been through that, is there something about that experience or that warmness, like you say, is that something that you have taken into your business in any way, or is there something you took away from that experience that you use in business yourself?
Well, for sure. I think that there's in Asia, there's a lot of talk about face culture, people that are big in Japanese, Korean, Chinese business will say, oh, you've got to do this for face, or they're doing that to save face or to give them face or something. So that's this whole idea of, like, the people's sensitivity to the social perception of your relationship or you as an individual or whatever. And you know, you might call it in the West like stroking somebody's ego, or you might say it like that. And so in the West, we have this idea around ego and relationship between the individual and society as being like a bad thing. Like it's a bad thing that you're very socially sensitive. It's a bad thing that you care so much what other people think, or it's a bad thing that you are acting in a performative way, for example. In Asia, it's really the inverse, where the weight is more on society and there's a lot less of a weight on the individual. And that's, we just assume that that's bad. But I've lived in both sides. And so I can see where there's benefits. Like if there's a crisis, for example, it's easier to get people to work together and collaborate. You might say with a Western conspiratorial hat, like it's easier. Now we're all sheeple and you're going to take advantage of us. You know?
Right.
And so, but we have a totally different view of you know,
right.
social structure or whatever.
Right.
But one thing I can say, having lived on both sides, is like, it's really worth it to be sensitive to the image of leaders that you're interacting with in business. And you know, you can, it's a little, you get a little like Sun Tzu Art of War, or a little bit like Robert Greene Laws of Power or whatever, where you don't outshine the master. Like that's the number one, that's laws of power number one, is if there's somebody that you're doing business with, like don't sun them in front of their team. Like, you know, I'd say to people all the time, even when things aren't their idea, but if they were just collaborators in an idea or initiative, I'd be like, hey, John, that was a great idea that you had to do this. And like, wow, how much it's worked out. Now, it wasn't John's idea. It might've been my idea, you know, but like if John's getting credit and I just want the idea to go forward and I want John and his team to collaborate, and we're all
and everybody wins.
We're all winning. So like it's a lot of just suppression of your own ego, and knowing to just give out praise, and not in a sycophantic way, in like a way that feels warm and genuine.
It's fascinating because I think in Western culture, we have such a fixation on ownership. And like a fixation on ownership of our ideas, ownership of our contributions, ownership of things that we built or contribute to. And then the feedback loop that we're conditioned is that if people know that you're the owner of it, then that's when you actually get rewards. So what you're saying is like in Eastern culture, it's actually maybe the opposite, where it's everybody collectively wants just the whatever that idea thought is to move forward. And so therefore it's the focus is on the community aspect of just making it move forward rather than the individual getting credit beyond whoever is the main person who's going to help to move it forward. Is that fair?
And I think totally. I think there's benefits both ways. So I think there's just real value in thinking about it from either direction. Because you don't want to live in an extreme on either side, right? Like almost always the answer's in the middle. You don't want to live in this world where it's like nobody gets any credit for anything and everything is just the property of the state, to put a point on it. But you know, you also don't want to live in this world where, you know, I think sometimes we see things slide too far in the other direction, where things are so individualistic. And another frame for individuality is antisocial, right? And we don't really see it that way necessarily, but the more that you're like, no, I'm going to do things my way, like never mind the group, like that is antithetical to having some kind of social harmony. And that's really a question of people's value system. Now we're getting like very meta, but it's really a question of people's value systems of, do you value some kind of social order versus you know, individual autonomy, and you know, the answer always is somewhere in the middle. It can't be total anarchy and it can't be total submission, but to live in a context where you see things that are on a different part of that spectrum is interesting, and will, I think, shape you for the better, at least in terms of your own perspective.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it seems like, I mean, given how you have such a depth experience and perspective of both cultures, I could see why now that how you've been so successful in your hospitality career, because a lot of the companies that you've also worked for and worked with over the years have global coverage around the world.
Mm-hmm.
They have locations both in the East and the West. And so you've been able to successfully make the top 50 lists for bars for the world in both East and West. Can you talk about the difference of experience between those two?
The real secret is in crushing your own ego. There's this whole idea ego is the enemy and all this. So I learned this lesson in a big way when I first moved to Korea. So I was at a hotel called the Nomad Hotel, and we won all the awards. We got our James Beard Awards and 50 Best for the bar and a Michelin star for the restaurant. And it was like the hottest thing. And I was managing all the bar programming there. So I had 40 employees. We were raging. You know, I had, or at least 40 employees under me, right? It was the hotel employees, but I was leading a team of 40, I should say. And just at the highest level, doing high volume cocktail, everyone's like, oh my God, you guys are the best. So then I got a job for Four Seasons Hotel to open their new property in Seoul, South Korea. I'd never lived in Korea. I don't speak Korean. And that was a totally new territory for me. And so I wound up moving, you know, I applied to that role because I was very interested in getting into opening hotels and greater leadership of multiple venues, both as a creative exercise, like it's very interesting and satisfying to develop so much stuff and then train that many people. And then also from kind of this business social contribution side of saying, look, if we're able to run 8 venues at a time, I can train these people, this many new people to work in a different way, to make money for themselves and their families, to give a great experience to guests and make people happy en masse. And that's always been my long-term vision, even since the Nomad days, is to be able to be in a space where I can have a greater and greater field of influence to bring positive change. So to be in a place where I can have teams that have teams that have teams that train people to give that kind of gift. For me, I find that satisfying. So Korea was the first step in that journey. I moved to Seoul. I know nothing. I don't know anything about, you know, I was working nonstop at the Nomad. So by the time I finally got to catch my breath, I was on a plane to Korea and said, oh boy, I have no idea what I'm getting myself into. I know the food's going to be spicy. I know I like kimchi. That's pretty much all I got. So I wound up moving out there, and we started developing the bars and restaurants. And I was in charge of all the beverage. Again, 8 venues. We had a speakeasy bar in the basement designed by Avrico, beautiful, called Charles H. I recommend anybody gives it a Google. It's like a stunning venue. And I started leading the team to develop what eventually became the first ever bar in Korea to get on the 50 best list. So I'll just give you a little anecdote about ego. Is I'm there, we're running the bar, and I'm having the hardest time getting our service staff in Korea to actively refill water glasses for guests. This seems like a trivial detail, but it winds up being very important. Is when you're in a great venue, in my opinion, service and hospitality is when, you know, the guest has everything they need and nothing that they don't, and you can preempt what they might want. You know, you go to a great space, every time you feel like you need something, it just happens to appear, right? The server's coming over at just the right time. Like, oh man, I was just about to ask for you. And you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like, You're getting low on that cocktail. You start to have that little anxiety.
It never quite gets to the bottom, and they're like,
and they come, and it's super cool and effortless, right?
Absolutely.
And people know you miss them when they're away, and you feel like, oh my God, this place gets me. And so I'm trying to get our staff to like do that, and to not hide in the back of the venue until they're called, right? And I noticed it drives me crazy, of course, if a guest is like snapping their fingers for attention. A, that's not a cool thing to do, but B, also like, why is it that the staff is creating a situation in which someone might feel the need to be rude to get their attention, right? It works both ways.
Right.
So I'm talking to them, and what I wound up realizing was that in Korea, that's not how service works. And I realized eventually that I was pushing my expectations and culture and Western values of what I presumed would be
to be great service.
Excellent. And even though my intentions were in the right place, the reality was I was actually making everybody in the room uncomfortable with this service style, because I was taking from them the ability to serve each other. In Korea, the servers are supposed to stay way over there because we are having our group bubble. And if I want something from you, I'm going to call you. Right. And yo, and you see them like, and then the server's like, eh, and then they like,
yeah.
You're not supposed to like hover and come and check in.
So that's also why in the States here, when you go to Korean barbecue, there's a button that you press where then they come and they bring you whatever it is that you need. You press the button to be called.
It removes all that social awkwardness of having to call and whatever. And you just hit the button, because the idea is servers are going to leave us alone. We are having time together. Like I'm preparing food for you, and you're pouring drinks for me, and this is our
right. Where for us, the version, the epitome of service is like someone is there before you need them. They're constantly circling and hovering and like
they're not
the atmosphere.
And not pestering, but being, what I mean?
Hovering,
it's that fine line, right? You go to like a fancy steakhouse and you see the servers are all at attention, like they're the ball boys in a tennis match, that they're just ready to go and sprint if you need anything.
So how did you come to this realization? Just like watching, or did somebody tell you, or what happened?
No, having like 2 ears and 1 mouth. I'm pretty socially sensitive in that way of just watching group dynamics and what's good and what's bad. And I would ask people like what restaurants they like. And I think if you don't, you also need to have a self-awareness, and you need to have a certain degree of empathy and understand that you're, I think especially with hospitality, you're developing something that's inherently kind of like not for you. This is a space for the people that are going to enjoy the space. We'll do a menu for an owner, owner of a restaurant or a hotel. And, we will propose the menu, and they're like, oh, I hate salmon, so let's get rid of that dish. And I'd be like, well, my friend,
99% of the world does not hate salmon.
This ain't about you. Ultimately, it's like, what is this for you and to you as someone that's creating? Is this about you, or is it about the audience? And great art, of course, is a mix. Great art and consumer art. Restaurants are consumer art. You are creating something that is part an expression of yourself and your own, thoughts and experiences and what you think is cool. But you have to be equally or even more sensitive to how that's going to be received by the outside world. And to your question about building spaces, east and west and various hotel groups, and we do private restaurants and everything from like a really fancy membership club in Palm Beach to we just did a rock and roll venue and bar and restaurant called Garcia's with Jerry Garcia's family, the late Jerry Garcia from Grateful Dead.
Did you, speaking of, so you speak multiple languages, but I'm curious, so did you learn Korean while you were in South Korea?
I learned a little. I can like order beer to the table, you know what I mean? But
So how do you
The important
enter
things.
you're being hired kind of as the boss to come in and you don't
yes.
speak the language. What was your approach to being able to communicate?
Well, the great news is when you're working with an international hotel like Four Seasons,
They all speak
all this
English.
Right.
step one is, do you speak English? Yes, no, because the guests
Right.
are coming from all around the world. And
Right.
so, and also international hotels worldwide tend to be in this kind of English first working environment. But you know, and I know that if you really want to speak to someone and really understand them, if you're speaking through a second language, like it's always going to be a challenge,
Sure.
especially when you get into like junior staff. Like, how well does that bartender really speak English?
Right.
It's going to be a lot of gesturing and we're going to get through it kind of clunkily.
Right.
And then the other part is language and culture are inextricable. So you cannot learn a language without understanding the culture, and you cannot understand a culture without learning the language. So when I am spending time in Japan or in China, having spent so many years there, Korea to some degree, like the only when I started to get deep in both a language and culture context together was I really able to start to empathetically feel like I had some level of understanding of like why people are doing what they're doing and what does that mean, right? Which is kind of what a culture is.
I'm curious, so you've lived in so many different countries, and did you approach the way to integrate yourself into that specific country when you moved there the same way at each location, or did it change over time?
Sure. I think in terms of integration into a culture, like there's two parts to that. One is like a functional kind of integration. So I might move to Korea and okay, now I got to get a phone and now I got to get an apartment and through doing that process, you're going to naturally encounter a bunch of stuff. We call that culture shock, right? You're going to be like, what do you mean I can buy a live squid at the grocery store? Or, you know, what do you mean 7-Eleven has like live, oh my God, 7-Eleven in Seoul, or like, it's called like K, I forget what the name of the convenience store is there, but you've got like the beer and the snacks. And then I remember going in one day and there was just like live crabs in a basket with like a set of tongs next to it. You just grab yourself a couple live crabs and chuck it in the old bag there. So, you know,
No big deal.
I saw those at my 7-Eleven, but they weren't crabs.
It's a totally different side of the spectrum. It's definitely given me a lot of perspective, and as someone that puts together social spaces for a living and builds teams for a living, that sense of perspective has been, I think, something that's really helped those spaces and teams be more successful.
I have a question about that because you just said, you know, like you said, the social spaces for a living, but also like building teams for a living is a big part of what you do. And we haven't fully covered it here, but I know like it wasn't that you necessarily went to school for like management or like business in that sense. You went and studied foreign languages. So I'm curious what you've learned about management of teams over the years, having built and run so many in all these different places, which it just sounds intimidating to say out loud. And we all know people, you know, we love people, but you know, people can be very challenging, you know, from time to time. So I'd love to know like, yeah, what you've learned or like what your approach is, like just like IV us with your management greatness.
Step one is just do your best every day that you can. If sometimes the effort and results are great, then I'm grateful to work with awesome people that are able to achieve those results together. I guess management journey, like my first ever time as a manager was at the Nomad Hotel running that team. And I was fortunate that it was in the context of a hotel where there's different managers running different aspects of the hotel.
Right.
I had some amazing people alongside me that really made sure that one another's work was very good, and made sure that we didn't fail as individuals, because then we would fail as a team. And we had an awesome culture at that hotel of excellence and of mutual support. That's where I met my business partner, Jeff Tascarella. He was the GM of that hotel at the time. So like kudos to Jeff for helping to create such an awesome culture. So then going to Korea, I got a lot of management training at the Four Seasons. I was blessed, and of course worked very hard, and took big risks and big swings, and left New York, a team in New York that was like crushing it, to go and carve my own path and make my own name in Korea, where I don't speak the language. And that was all very scary and not easy at any point in time. But along the way, I got really great experience and education and learning from Four Seasons, that objectively does an amazing job with manager training. I have to kudos to them. Even after working with 100 different hotel companies between then and now, they're still gold standards. So I learned some great things there. I moved to China, and then now I'm actually GM of a company. What was called Proof and Company was the group that I was running there. And we had it was a larger wine importer, this French wine importer. And I realized, I was like, if we're not making money, and if this isn't profitable, and we're not sending money back to the Singapore mothership, and if it's not sustainable, I'm not going to have this job in 2 years. Like they say, if you want to take the island, you got to burn the boats. You know what I mean? And it's like, I don't either. I'm going back to Baltimore to work in the crab house again, or I'm going to figure this out. And so, I started reading a lot of books. I started reading a lot about, business and management, managing people, everything I could get my hands on. I read a ton of books. I was able to sit, I was pretty active, and I asked for advice. Hey, I don't understand a P&L. Can you help? YouTube, I did a ton of YouTube to learn P&L management, cash flow.
Wow.
Oh my God. I've learned so much on YouTube
University.
it's way better. Honestly, and you can learn so much. I did, Khan Academy in the early days, just their videos about, stocks and bonds and markets and how all this works. And for me, it was just a little bit anxiety of just, look, if I don't figure this out and grow it, then it,
goes away. Right.
Yeah, it goes away. And with a company, it's one of the things with team leadership and growing a company and all this is, if you don't, there's one way to look at it, which is if you're not growing, you're dying, and then you have to make hard decisions. It's hard every day. It's just, you want fun hard or not fun hard.
Yeah.
And fun hard is we're growing too fast, and now I have to hire more people, and we have too many clients, and my lobster's too buttery and my steak's too tender. But it's that's the fun hard. It's still going to be complicated. I still have to figure it all out. But I would rather that. And so, I really changed my mindset around it and said, look, I'm going to grow this. We're going to be the best that we can be, because then I can hire amazing people, hardworking, honest people. I can put more people on the bus. Right now we're a fun team of 16. We have offices in Miami, New York, and Bangkok. We work with all the major hotel groups doing cool hotel projects and fun restaurants, and some really cool private boutique stuff. We've done projects in Maldives and Bangkok.
Wow.
And, we just got a new project in Mexico City, and one in Medellin, and one in Buenos Aires, and one in we're all over. And we just signed up iconic hotel in Barcelona that's doing hundreds of millions of dollar renovation, and they chose us to put together a brand new series of restaurants and bars for them. So it's I'm grateful. We just try to do the very best job that we can. It's, at the end of the day, these are spaces about the people that are going to work in them and dine in them and drink in them. And we just try to give the gift that we can.
You've obviously taken a lot of risk of leaving one of the top bars in the world that you built, that you helped build, then going to another country. You've lived in multiple other countries. You rebuild all over the world, different hospitality venues. What gives you the confidence, or what's your mindset before you take huge risks where you're literally uprooting your life to go make these changes? And how do you manage any fears that may come along with that, or are there any fears?
It's scary every time. I mean, the first big risk. So I was I guess I moved to China and learned Mandarin, but my first big professional risk was I was sitting as a translator once I had my degree and once I finished all this education. And I realized I sat there at my desk and I was using a thing suddenly called Google Translate. It's not good, but it won't stay bad for long. Eventually, it's going to be better than me. I know how technology goes. So, like, let's not kid ourselves that this is an exponential change. And I think a lot of people out there listening are probably having a similar feeling to how I felt looking at Google Translate. I said, hey, sooner or later, translation's going away. And sooner or later, a lot of jobs are going away. We can't kid ourselves about that. And that's always been true, right?
But that you would see it and immediately pivot. I think that's not everybody, because we tend to hold on.
And if you're really honest with yourself about uncomfortable truths, then you will realize that the pain of change is way less scary than the pain of staying the same. The pain of change is way less scary than the pain of staying the same. The only reason that we don't see it that way is because the pain of staying the same is way off in the distance and we just don't have to worry about it right now. But by the time you do have to worry about it, when you're old and you have less time and you're less energetic and you now are deeper in the wrong relationship or you are in the job that's wrong for you.
You know what's so what's so interesting about that is I used to think that our aversion to change is some evolutionary thing, like because we try to survive. So if something's safe, then we don't take unnecessary risks because in prehistoric time, it may have killed us, right? But now I think it's actually kind of the opposite. I feel like our resistance to change is actually making us more extinct than to lean into change. And Kisha had actually just had made a comment about this recently where we were getting interviewed on another podcast and where she talks about how a productivity hack is to actually lean into the change and go with the current rather than resisting. And one of the realizations that we've kind of had is all of our guests have indicated on some level that once you stop the resistance towards change, you realize how much like time you're no longer wasting.
I totally agree with you is that you're staying the same, but there are truths inside of you that you are not dealing with. Let's just say that, right? That's why people go and do ayahuasca, is they're like, oh my God, I finally had to deal with the thing that I wasn't going to deal with, right?
Yeah.
So there's, but on some level, on some, if you're really,
you always know, of course,
at night when you lay your head down on the pillow, and there is that little voice that's saying, you
100%.
should have blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But then also, you have this other thing that is like pragmatism. I think, Shana, to your point earlier of like resistance to change being this kind of evolutionary benefit, I think that both are true. And I think that it's more true in a world where, let's say in the prehistoric world where change is glacial. And then now we're in this world that's just transforming so quickly. It's going to require this fairly exhausting amount of pivoting. And all of us are like sick of pivoting since COVID. I'm sick of it. I know everyone's
Sure.
like, if you tell me, oh, just learn to code, or okay, I did that, and now the
Right.
machine's coding.
Right.
What do you want me to do?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So like on one hand, it means that like there's just going to be more change, and the more that we resist it, the more that we're just going to get like blindsided, because you can't be an ostrich with your head in the sand and say, I'm just not going to accept that AI is coming. At the same time, it's like, well, in this world of constant tumult, what gives you a sense of gravity, you know? And so I think that ironically, there are going to be, you know, I see this big resurgence, but like tradition in some ways becomes more important than ever. Like these community ties that bring us together, people finding religion, people getting back into family life, people like refocusing on the domestic and like a small circle of people who they really believe in, or shared ideologies and values. Like having that sense of like you need some gravity somewhere, right? We can't just be change, or we're gonna snap.
Right.
We're gonna
So
kaput.
yeah, that's it.
Right.
That's it. Jiu-jitsu, that gives me a tremendous sense of gravity, because it's one thing that you can't shortcut and can't automate and can't, like, that is a journey between you and yourself, and you just can go work on this very hard thing with a group of people that are also there to work on a really hard thing. And I recommend that everybody has some kind of anchor like that in their life, because everything else is going to keep changing. It's going to be hard.
So I wanted to ask you, I mean, obviously you've talked about going like kind of from success to success, like building Nomad, going to Korea, building all these different relationships and building out all these different bars and restaurants, and but I was curious, in your career, has there ever been a time where things really kind of didn't work or kind of fell apart for you? And if so, what did you learn from that experience?
100%. And I think entrepreneurship is super scary every day. You're trying to snatch victory from the jaws of defeat, you know, and projects don't work out all the time. Employees don't work out. You know, there's been a lot of roads that we've gone down just looking at LTH in the last 5 years as we've grown the company. It's been, you've got all the normal difficulties of running a business and cash flow and trying to pay salaries, and you got 16 people around the world. I think to be an entrepreneur and to be a leader of women and men, you have to have a sense of kind of relentless optimism, and that's me for sure. Like, I just have a glass is half full kind of perspective, where even if it's difficult, it's because it's going somewhere, and the hardships are always in service of something. You have to take a sense of perspective that this isn't the end of the movie, you know. Yes. Like if you turn off Rocky halfway through and he's just getting his shit kicked in, and you know, he doesn't have the girl, and he's just poor and in his like Philly stoop, and like a lot of people get this perspective, I think, and they say, oh, I'm just gonna watch a new movie, like I'm just gonna quit this and go and okay, but what good is any story without a dramatic arc? And that's why we love this kind of thing as human beings. I went to this awesome entrepreneur event in Banff, and there was this guy that was up talking to the group, and he helps build water wells and villages in African nations, and he's thousands of kids are like spared from civil war because he funds like security teams that like help keep the schools safe. And I mean, just tremendous work, this guy and his life story. And he like grew up in the Amazon, and he in like a local civil war, and had seen just these terrible things. And he had dealt with insane hardship personally. We asked him, like, dude, how have you dealt? So how he says it is, I feel like I'm watching this game already knowing the score and already knowing that my team wins. So I actually feel inspired seeing our team get scored on, knowing that, oh my God, like they come back from this too.
Yeah.
And so he said that, and I was like, that is some deep.
That's some cheat code shit right there.
That's some deep cheat code shit. You're absolutely right. And so that's really how I see it. And it's like, look, there's been times, there's been tough times in Korea, and I've had bosses that I've fought with, and I definitely, I've definitely worked for some real jerks. I've definitely had some people that, didn't behave in a way that I thought was ethical or in a way that I thought was good for the team. I have worked with people that I always say, look, man, I've been treated worse by better people.
People, right?
Yeah, 100%. And so I've seen all this, and there's been years, certainly in my earlier 20s, where I had a lot of anger in my heart about just how some people that are given this gift of leadership and given this gift to steward a team can possibly look at that as a something to just take for granted and just go and play and do whatever they want. Like there's a lot of injustice in this world, right? And how I have chosen to look at that in my life is, okay, what kind of leader do I want to be? And how do I make sure that my company grows to the maximum level that it possibly can responsibly, so that I can bring in as many hardworking, great people as I possibly can and give them the leadership experience and the company experience that I always thought was possible, and have an awesome time together. So it's, I try to just do something positive with it. And, there's definitely some people that I'd be very happy to never interact with for the rest of my days on this earth. But I have to choose to be grateful for times that I was slighted or lied or misrepresented or whatever, because there's good to come from it. That's how I choose to look at it.
Well, thank you, Chris, so much for joining us today. We appreciate this, and I feel like we're going to need a part 2 because you have a lot more stories that you can share with us. But thank you for opening up and telling us a little bit about your travels and your career, and it's so fascinating. And I think your approach to just being so flexible with your career is inspiring. So thank you for that.
Thanks for having me on, and thanks for holding the space, and thanks to everybody for listening. And hey, if you've got more questions, I'll be happy to come back and talk to you. I had an awesome time today.
Yeah, amazing.